This is the story of the Concorde Bomber that never was. Welcome to War Chronicle, where history's battles, strategies, and untold stories come alive. From ancient battlefields to modern warfare, we uncover the events that shaped nations and changed the world forever. If you enjoy my content, please do consider supporting me. Your support helps to ensure I can keep bringing you great stories like this one each and every week. By the 1950s, the British and French governments were on the hunt for a replacement for their aging bomber fleets. For Britain, this meant replacing the English electric Canberra, while France needed a new aircraft to replace their aging B-29 Superfortress, as well as serve as a replacement for the tactical strike role performed by the E, a swept-wing jet fighter with delta-wing planform first flown in 1947. But there was also another reason behind this joint project. By combining resources, both countries could afford to develop new technologies, including supersonic flight, something neither nation could contemplate funding alone. After much discussion, two Avions Marcel Dassault designs were selected. The first was a new version of the Mr. 2, known as the Mr. 3, which would be powered by two Rolls-Royce engines under the designation Swift 2. This was to be a tactical strike aircraft, but it was the second project that really caught the imagination of the British and French air staffs. A long-range supersonic bomber to be known as the V-1, initial specifications called for a maximum takeoff weight of 28,000 pounds. A high-performance thin supercritical wing would allow the aircraft to achieve a top speed of over Mach 2 at 60,000 feet. Crucially, the design incorporated internal weapons bays, making it the world's first supersonic strike aircraft to feature this technology. In fact, the use of internal weapons bays was a deal-breaker for the British Air Ministry. They stipulated that any new bomber must have them. If it was to replace the Canberra, designed around these requirements, the V-bomber featured a low-set tailplane, swept wings, and a distinctive forward-facing air intake, a feature copied directly from the American F-104 Starfighter. The fuselage was narrow, just 10 feet wide, with a crew of 4, 2 pilots and 2 aircrewmen sitting side by side in a tandem cockpit layout. To house the bomb load inside the fuselage, the wings were built with massive internal fuel tanks. This not only allowed the aircraft to carry large conventional bombs, but also house experimental area rule-compliant nuclear weapons, which were being developed by the British at the time. Two alternatives were proposed for propulsion, either to Rolls-Royce or to Snecma engines. The Rolls-Royces were preferred and would eventually be fitted to the prototype. The British government had already invested heavily into the development of the Avon turbojet and wanted to ensure its place in the new bomber. As work progressed, it became clear that the original specifications were overly optimistic. A weight-saving exercise revealed that a maximum takeoff weight of 32,000 pounds was required for the V-1 to meet its performance targets. To achieve this, the design team proposed a larger version of the prototype. Known as the V-1B, it featured additional fuel capacity, revised wings with increased sweep and improved aerodynamics, and more powerful engines. Performance was slightly reduced from the original specification, but the aircraft would still exceed Mach 1.6, allowing it to penetrate deep into enemy airspace. The V-1B design did, however, present handling characteristics that were deemed unmanageable. At high speeds, the aircraft was incredibly sensitive to control inputs, leading to the possibility of a pilot overcorrecting and entering a flat spin. While this could be remedied, the solution added weight, pushing the V-1B over its structural limits. Faced with the prospect of yet another redesign, the project was shelved in July of 1961. But wait a minute. You might be thinking the V-1B sounds pretty similar to the Concorde, and you'd be right. The two projects shared a common DNA, but they weren't the same. The V-1 was bigger, carrying almost twice the fuel and a much bigger payload. Crucially, it was designed from the outset to be a bomber. The Concorde, on the other hand, was originally conceived as a transport. In fact, the Concorde project was born out of the same desire to combine resources as the V-1. By the late 50s, both France and Britain were looking to develop supersonic transports, but neither could afford the expense alone. By working together, they could, sharing the costs and reaping the rewards. Despite the similarities between the two designs, the Concorde was in many ways the better choice. Not only did it offer the potential for huge cost savings, but it was arguably less risky. A transport has a better chance of economic viability than a bomber, particularly during peacetime. When the Concorde was first flown in 1969, it was seen as the future of travel, allowing passengers to fly from London to New York in just 3.5 hours. While the Concorde would eventually enter service with British Airways and Air France, the V1 remained in the prototype stage. Only one was ever built, and that disappeared without a trace. The prototype was rolled out of the factory on February 14, 1963, and made its first flight on June 4. Piloted by Max Coast, the head of flight testing for avians, Marcel Desault. Sadly, the test program was cut short. On September 27, the prototype was destroyed in a runway accident during high-speed taxiing. No reason was found for the accident, and the program was cancelled soon after. The Sol V1 prototype was written off as an experimental airframe, and the project was shelved in favor of the Concorde. Avians Marcel Desault broke the prototype up and shipped the parts back to France, where they disappeared into a store at Le Bourget Airport. Today, very little is known about the fate of the prototype beyond this point. Some sources claim it was scrapped, but others insist it survives in a hangar in Paris, guarded day and night by men in black. To date, no one has been able to confirm the existence of the secret stash, or what is in it. Bernard kept his promise and destroyed the logbook. He did, however, keep another book, one filled with diagrams, technical data, and specifications. This he has held on to all these years, cherishing it like a long-lost friend. In an exclusive interview, Bernard told me the following. After the prototype was broken up, the bits were sent to various subcontractors who had worked on the project. As for the prototype itself, it was taken to Le Bourget and stored in Hangar X. One day, some journalists snuck into the hangar and published pictures of the remains of the V1 in the press. This led to a visit from the French defense minister, who ordered the destruction of the remaining parts. According to Bernard, he then visited Hangar X to make sure the aircraft had been destroyed. But it had not. Parts of the V1 were still there. He contacted the minister's office and asked them to return him the parts, so that he could build a replica. They agreed, and he began collecting the parts, taking them home piece by piece, including the canopy and cockpit displays. All this happened in secret. Bernard did not want anyone to know what he was doing. He managed to smuggle the parts into his garage, where he rebuilt the cockpit and preserved the rest of the aircraft. According to Bernard, he still owns the parts today and plans to donate them to a museum once he passes away. So there you have it, the story of the Concorde bomber that never was. Could there really be a V1 tucked away in a French hangar? It certainly seems possible. Bernard is adamant that the aircraft survives in its entirety and that it will one day see the light of day again. Maybe one day soon we will get to see it for ourselves. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.